Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Glory Glory Man United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Quinn, and join me today on this glorious morning to review United's 1-0 victory over Newcastle. It was a gutsy performance in the second half, and unfortunately, me and Chris have been talking for 40 minutes. I realised we hadn't actually hit the go live button, so we're going to have to do it all over again. So it's a real game of two halves. United dominated the first half, probably should have went in 2 or 3 up. And the second half, it was just all Newcastle, largely down to United's substitutions. Um, I I think Amarim must have felt that certain players were at risk of picking up injuries. Mount felt something at half time, had to take him off then, even though he wanted to play on. Um, Casemiro was in the twilight of his career and rarely plays 90 minutes, so he decided to take him off after 60 minutes, and he was like, "Me? You're taking off me?" Uh, and he took off Sesko, who's only back from injury, so now he didn't want to risk overplaying him too soon. And Xerxes came on, and then two really bizarre substitutions at the end. Fredrickson and Malacia coming on. Fredrickson hadn't played since Grimsby, and Malacia hadn't played since last January. But United's rearguard action was superb, defended superbly as a unit, and kept Newcastle out against all the odds. Only our second clean sheet of the season. So it was an ugly win. I wasn't, overly impressed by what I saw in the second half. From a attacking point of view, we certainly don't want to see United having 25% possession at home. But it was a gutsy performance, and happy to get the 3 points.
I'll take it all day long. Kyle, yeah, just as you said there. Just to also say as well, yeah, it's not often on live podcasting that you get a 40-minute rehearsal, so that was really nice to have that today. Um, yeah, no, it was just like you said. It was good to get 3 points, good to keep a clean sheet. It was yeah, and a change of formation for Amram, which I know we'll probably touch on later, I'm sure. But that's not the kind of performance, certainly at Old Trafford, that you'd want to see in terms of percentage possession and how that second half went in terms of us really just being back against the wall. But with players away at AFCON with injuries, and having to change up personnel and give opportunities to younger players who wouldn't normally maybe thrown into a game of this kind of magnitude against a European level team, as Newcastle are these days. I think it was all in all a good performance, and the gambles in terms of the late substitutions, and sitting with their backs against the wall for half an hour, 40 minutes if you had an injury time, or time added at the end. It turned out to be a gamble that paid off. So all in all, I enjoyed the first half more than the second half. First half, I actually thought we were attacking really well. I thought, but we didn't take our chances, as unfortunately, as well as probably we should, and that might have resulted in a slightly more comfortable finish to the game if we had been 2-0 up rather than just 1-0 up. But all in all, look, you take 3 points, and this season's been so up and down. I enjoy the positives, I really do. And yeah, it's nice to see what is gambling substitutions that could have went wrong and so often have in the past, and left us really frustrated. For once, they paid off and we're able to see the game out. So yeah, positive, I suppose, in some ways.
Yeah, and we have to get on to Dorgu's goal. Absolutely amazing technique. He surprised himself. He said in the post-match interview he didn't know he could do that. He seen the ball drop and he was in space, so he went for it, and boy did he catch it well. And I was frustrated lately because in the last two international breaks he had scored for Denmark in on both international breaks. Scored against Scotland, of course, in that amazing game. And I thought he hasn't done this for United yet, and we waited 11 months, and it was definitely worth the wait. And they gave him great confidence. We've seen him, after that, he was taking people on. He was trying to chip the goalkeeper from outside the box. And yeah, he you've seen that a lot in football where someone scores a great goal and then or even a tap in, and they get confidence from it. And he was very much a makeshift right winger, but it was a really good performance by him in the first half. I didn't think he'd be able to fill in for Mbeumo and Ahmad, but he did a really good job of it. I don't expect to see that on a permanent basis, but fair play to him. He was a really good stand-in last night, and we have to mention the change of system. First time since Amram became the head manager that we've seen a back four. It was the four at the back where it was Dallo at right back, Heaven and Martinez in the middle, Shaw at left back. Once again, been a long time. Casemiro and Ugarte as the holders. The the three attackers, um, Dorgu on the right, Mount as the 10, and Kuna on the left, and Shesko up front as the number 9. So it was very much a Ten Hag or Solskjaer type system. And it was funny what Amarim said after the game. He said, back four, clean sheet, Kobe Menu injured. I don't need to do a press conference. We covered all the subjects. Let's go away, enjoy our Boxing Day. So he's obviously fed up with the same questions week in and week out, and everything worked out last night. We played the back four, we got the clean sheet, we got the 3 points, and you can say it very much worked in the first half. We don't want to see a repeat of the second half, but I think it was down to the fact that he felt he had to take players off to manage their minutes, and that our bench was full of kids, and it was obviously going to be a drop off when you're bringing on, kids and Xerxes and players he hadn't played for 11 months.
Yeah.
It's so we can understand why United had to resort to kind of holding on because we weren't able to bring off any quality from the bench. Really, come on, we're missing most of our time. I mean, Delict, Maguire injured. Um, so are Menu and Bruno Fernandes, who's our most important player. Mbumo and Ahmad are away at AFCON, and Mount had to come off. That's most of our first 11. So you can understand why there was such a massive drop off in the second half.
No, 100%. I mean, it was definitely a case of him, or it felt like a case of him needing to adapt as opposed to necessarily wanting to adapt. But all in all, like you said, Kyle, it worked out in terms of result, although the performance in the second half just wasn't great. Yeah, in terms of the general sort of change, I think it's an interesting one because he has been so rigid for the last sort of season and a half. And last year, it seemed like he was willing to, almost lose his job and United potentially to be relegated or to be very close to getting relegated as we were, without him changing his system. So it is interesting that now he's changed. Like you said, it feels more like needs must with players out and that the AFCON and players injured as opposed to him necessarily feeling like, oh, my system isn't working. Although I did think his comments were really interesting where he basically said that in order to be able to effectively implement the system as he thinks it should be done will take a lot more time, a lot more money, and he doesn't think that that's going to happen quickly. And so there may be a need to adapt. So I thought that was interesting, and it makes you think, is it a slight veiled dig at those above him at the club who maybe had assured him when he came in that he was going to be given all the backing he needed to turn it around really quickly and implement a system, and maybe he hasn't felt that that's came to the extent that he thought it would. Who knows? But either way, yeah, like I say, he's changed regardless, and it seems to have worked. But yeah, the drop off in the second half, and once again, odd, seemingly kind of odd substitutions. At 60 minutes, bringing on defenders, and yeah, okay, Mount had to come off at half time. And that's probably precautionary, same precautionary in terms of injury. And we do need players over the break, so you don't want to risk a player who's important like Mason Mount getting injured. But yeah, as I say, you wouldn't want to see that every week. That 25% possession is at Old Trafford particularly is not what you want to see in a Man United team. But look, the gamble paid off and we got the result, so all good at the end.
Yeah, and there were some superb defensive performances. Eden Heaven getting man of the match, and Martinez was excellent as well, as you would expect. Um, yeah, the defensively, were brilliant as a unit in the second half. But as you said, it's not the sort of performance that we want to see at home very often. But I know that we're depleted at the moment, and it was needs must. And yeah, and you want to see more of the first half. You want to see United do that for 90 minutes, but the resources we have at the moment don't allow that. And yeah, he had warned in the build up to the game that a change was coming in terms of his formation and system. He was saying that he's not going to get the time or the money and to bring in the players for his preferred system. so he's going to adapt, and obviously Afcon allows him the opportunity to save face in that, um, and he done that last night. You know, it was the first time we've seen an obvious back four line out for United, and it resulted in 3 points. But as you say, we want to see more of the first half performance and less of the second half performance. Even though it's great to get a clean sheet and see United players play for the shirt, them all busting a gut last night, maybe apart from Xerxes, but we'll get into that. Um, and he's probably a player who's on the way out of the club. Maybe that's one of the reasons why. Um, yeah, I just will just mention that actually. Even there was no the United journalists that cover United for different publications, and there's and the usual suspects, you know, Samuel Luckhurst and Rob Dawson, and you know James Ducker and all the rest of them, David O'Donnell. They go to every single United game covering the club for different newspapers and different channels. Well, Rob Dawson was there last night, and he says Amarim, Amarim and the United players started to get really frustrated with Xerxes' attempts or lack thereof at holding the ball up. And I think Luckhurst said something similar about that. Amarim was screaming at Xerxes because, first of all, not holding the ball up very well, and then not busting a gut whenever he lost the ball. Um, I think there might be an element of that he's at 1 foot out the door. I think he's probably going to go to Roma in the January transfer window. But that being said, we still expect players, to give their all. And but it was apart. If we leave effort aside, his attempts at holding the ball up were pretty terrible, to be honest. And that's something that Sesko is much better at. And it was not good what we saw from Xerxes last night. At times he looks really well because he he's a very good dribbler. But we didn't see much of that last night, and we've seen all the bad sides to Xerxes last night. He doesn't score enough goals either, and he's not doing enough to prove his critics wrong. And I think that he's probably frustrated as lack of opportunities this season, and much of that is probably down to the lack of European football, a lack of League Cup football, and he probably wants to go back to Serie A and get more opportunities. But that while you're here, I still want to see him put in maximum effort, and I don't think we saw that last night.
No, definitely not. I always say about just professional pride, or just pride as a competitor. Never mind a professional. And you feel like when somebody doesn't put the effort in, they don't even care if they look stupid. They don't care if they look silly. They don't care if somebody beats them, or you know what I mean. They lose out to the ball to somebody. From a purely competitive perspective, you just think that a person playing football at that level would just, professionally and competitively would want to do well just for himself. So it is a shame when you see what looks like a lack of effort for whatever reason. And maybe you've hit the nail on the head, Kyle, with the 1 foot out the door thing. Who knows? But yeah, it frustrated me a number of times. There was a couple of times when I thought that he was trying to hold the ball up when he shouldn't even be holding it up because there's a run that was on, or there was space that he could have taken the ball into and he didn't. So maybe that's lack of effort. I thought, why are you even trying to hold it up? Don't stay with your back to the defender looking the ball to your feet when there's a run on. If you just turn around and try and get past him, you'll get found. So there was a couple of times I saw that and thought, why is he trying to hold it? And then, as you said, even when he tried to hold it up, he wasn't even successfully holding it up. So to me, he was making the wrong choice and then not even executing well the choice that he'd made, which was, in my mind, at times already the wrong choice. So I find him very frustrating. He was completely ineffective. He slowed the game up. The one only thing that caveat to me saying about him making a run is maybe he was instructed to go on and try and hold the ball up high up the pitch to kind of almost waste time and not let Newcastle get more chances. And if that was the gameplay, then okay, that maybe that explains why he wasn't trying to run in the channels and things like that. But like you say, if his job was to hold it up, he wasn't doing it. So he just was not having any positive impact on the game from United's perspective whatsoever. But yeah, like you said, generally I have liked Xerxes. My gut feeling on Xerxes has always been that there's a good player in there, but not a player that Manchester United needs, or not the style of player that I think will suit the Premier League or what United needs for the Premier League. That's always been my feeling on him. I wish him well if he goes. I do like him. I think he's a great feat. I think he is a great quality player. But I think his profile is maybe, that big, slightly sluggish but great feet type player is not really what we're looking for. And we kind of already have one of those in Sesko at the minute who we're hoping will become more dynamic. You certainly don't need two of the same. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really good dribbler and he can be good to watch at times. But he's not a goal scorer. He's not a striker, and he's not going to get a chance at number 10 for United on a regular basis, given the number 10s that we have available to us. And Kuna, Mabumo, Ahmad, Bruno, Manu. He's not going to play ahead of those players in that position. So he's not really a good fit, as you say. And
Yeah.
maybe it'd be better for all parties if he goes back to Serie A, and it very much it's like it's going that way. But if he doesn't leave in January, he definitely won't be here next September. I just don't see that happening. I think he's going to be moved on. But yeah, Amram was very frustrated with his performance last night as a substitution. Um, yeah, we have to get on to the man of the match, and we could see with our own eyes how well he was playing defensively, and the numbers certainly bear that out as well. So Aidan Haven, game by numbers, 100% ground duels won, 100% aerial duels won, 94% pass accuracy, 48 touches, 8 clearances, 3 passes into the final third, uh, 0 fouls committed, and 0 goals conceded. And, you know, he's came into the team since Delict picked up that back injury, and he had a bit of a shaky start. He looked rusty because I don't think he'd played since the Grimsby match. And but in more recent games, he's looked more assured. He's looked more confident. It was a big ask for him to play that centre back role in the back three, given his age, because it's a big responsibility that. But I thought he did well against Aston Villa in that role. But in the back four last night, he looked even more comfortable. He looked like a he looked more like a 26-year-old defender than a 19-year-old kid. And yeah, very very impressed with him and fully deserving of the man of the match. And I'm not surprised to learn that he was actually played as a midfielder in his days as an Arsenal youth player. And you can see that, with the 3 passes into the final third. And yeah, looks really comfortable on the ball and looks like a absolute steal at 1.5 million.
Absolutely. In the current market, 1.5 million feels like pocket change for a player if he continues on the trajectory that he's on. He looks absolutely brilliant. Like I said there, Kyle, he definitely looks old beyond his years. I thought against Villa, he stood out even though the game didn't go our way. I thought he had a really good performance, and certainly the result wasn't for lack of his effort or his performance on that day. And I think he looked, just more of that again last night. I thought he was brilliant. Yeah, he just, like you said, he looks mature. He's really composed on the ball. There was a position, I think, near the end of the game where I think I can't remember. It was just a moment where he had his back, I think, to the defender. Defender was on his back, and I thought it looked like the natural thing to do was play it back to the keeper. But the striker may have read it. And he just nice and coolly just took it round him on the other side and came back away from goal again. I just thought that's just really cool under pressure. Like you said, mature play that you'd expect from somebody like Martinez or someone, with a lot more experience under their belt. So yeah, I think he looks at the moment to be a wonderful player, and he definitely deserved all the plaudits that he's getting. I think the question for him will be whether he'll continue to get chances. Given that at the moment it's due to players being out and things like that. I really hope that he does. I think that his performances in the last few games at least have shown that he's got the ability. If he continues to play like this, it'll be hard to take him out for for someone else. So and yeah, and if we're lucky enough next year to get Champions League or European football of some level, it'll be good to have options of somebody like Aidan Heaven to be able to give a manager another headache and have a top class option like that as their to be able to fill in whenever there's a lot of games, because at the minute he's looking really, really good.
Yeah, I thought he was excellent when he started to play for United in the second half of last season, until he got that injury against Leicester. And then this season, when we saw him against Grimsby, obviously it was not a good performance. And in the first couple of games that he played when Delict got injured, he looked a bit rusty. But now we're seeing the old Aiden Heaven of last season come back again, and that confidence and that assurance. And certainly he's got a lot of belief in his own teammates, given what he said after the game too. He was saying, I hope that we can get into the top five in the Champions League spots, possibly even win the title." And I was thinking, what is he on crack?
Yeah, I'll not speculate on what's fueling those top level performances that he's putting out at the moment. No, definitely, yeah, it was kind of funny, but in a way, I love to see it though. And in a sense, you almost have to say, well, it's mathematically possible. You have to believe you can do it. Yes, we all know that's you should think that probably, but not actually say it in national media because it seems so unlikely. But I do like that he's got that confidence, and it's not even to me, it's just confidence. It's almost saying that's what his aim in his mind is. He's not there to settle for the odd result here and there and just get the Champions League spots. In his mind, he's clearly thinking, my job is to help us win every single game that we still have left to play. And if we win every single game, then we win the league. So that's my aim. And I mean, again, you might not say that, but that is the mentality you should have. And no matter, certainly at Man United and generally, I think, for any profession in the Premier League, no matter how unlikely it might seem to those around you, you should have that belief. I can win every game, and that's my job. So it was a good thing, although it looked a bit silly and naive. I think in reality, it shows a really good mentality. So it's kind of good to see, really.
Yeah, we as fans know that that's unrealistic, but I like our players thinking along those lines because we're playing for it's the biggest club in England who should be who should expect to challenge for the title every year. I know we've not been doing that, but that should always be the aim. And so I don't mind that confidence. And Roy Keane will probably be happy to hear him talk like that because that's the sort of United that he's used to. Talking about winning titles. I notice that I always notice Roy Keane that he's always critical when we lose or draw, but always praises the team when we win, even when we win ugly. He for him it's all about winning. And last night
Yeah.
he was full of praise. And it doesn't matter how we win; it's just about winning, and that's why at full time last night he was full of praise for United.
It reminds me of one of your favorite Jose Mourinho phrases, Kyle. I think you know the one about nothing, about winning. And yeah, and I wholly agree, and that is it. I think yeah, the things that you notice that Keane comments on, he comments most on mentality and character, as he calls it, and winning games. And I think that comes from the fact that he himself, although we say that his greatest attribute was not necessarily the ability they had, but it was the fact that he absolutely, was almost a fear of losing. It was a case of we have to win, and there's nothing else that's acceptable at Man United. And I think that is the mentality that you have to have when you're winning, and if you want to be a winner, I think that's the mentality you have to have. So any signs of not having that is not really what I think what we want to see at United. And Eden Heaven showing it albeit a bit exuberantly. That kind of mentality, yeah, I'm sure like Keane will have been happy with it for sure.
Yeah, and I think Mourinho would have been proud of Amorim last night, having about 7 defenders on the pitch at the end and holding out for the 1-0 victory. That was textbook Mourinho.
Absolutely. Pragmatism, like I say, about nothing, about winning. Yeah, it doesn't matter how you do it. 3 points is what counts. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll have to mention Martinez as well. Another superb performance at the back. He's tenacious. He reads the game really well. Brilliant tackler. The balls he plays over the top. That one to Dallo for that big chance. Um, it was exactly like the ball he played to Ahmad for the winner against City last season. Dallo actually brings it down really well on his chest, and then the left-footed shot is just miles over the crossbar. It was a terrible finish. And Chesko hit the crossbar as well. When it looked, Gary Neville thought he was offside, but there was the left back was playing him on, and turned out to be a massive chance, which he hit the top of the crossbar. Chesko missed a chance in the very early on in the game where a cross came in from the right wing. I think it might have been Dorgu, and he took a touch rather than shooting first time, which concerned me. And then his left-footed shot was well wide of the post. He's doing well in general play, Sesko, but he's bought to score goals and he's not doing that at the minute. But I'm willing to be patient, as you say. Um, the intensity of the Premier League is a lot different to Bundesliga. He wants a lot more time on the ball. He's he missed a couple of one-on-ones against City and Villa, for example, and then most obvious miss was that one where he was clean through against Tottenham, and he wanted too much time. And I know Van der Ven is quick, but he allowed him to get back at him when he should have got the shot away before Van der Ven was able to make the tackle. And yeah, he wants too much time on the ball. Maybe he's used to that in Germany, and he's going to have to get used to not having too much time on the ball in the Premier League, and it'll take him time to adapt. Willing to be patient, but he needs to get another goal as quickly as possible because he's on a bit of a drought at the moment. And I know it's been hard for him because it's been a stop-start season. He didn't start at the beginning of the season. He was on about 4 or 5 games in before he made his first start against City, and then he got that injury in November, which kept him out for over a month. So it hasn't been easy for him from that point of view either. But yeah, Martinez, his first start since February the 1st last night, and you wouldn't have known it. He almost gave away a penalty. It would have been very unlucky if that was the case, because I felt it was ball to hand and not hand to ball. I mean, Fabian Schär booted it up him from like 2 yards away, and he was jostling with another defender. He had his arms out anyway, when him and the other defender were jostling, and it hit his chest and then ricocheted onto his arm. But I was getting a bit worried because the VAR was slowing it down, and it always looks worse when you slow it down. Same with red card tackles; it always looks worse when you slow it down. And when you're slowing it down, you could see it hit his arm in two different places, and you're thinking, "Oh no, he's going to give this." But the sensible decision was made in the end, despite what Newcastle fans saying online. There's a stonewall penalty, and Anthony Taylor's from Manchester. You'd know that. Well, clearly he's never watched a United game before that Anthony Taylor has refereed. If he thinks that, sure. Anthony Taylor supports Altrincham, and he actually referees most of the Manchester derbies. So there's no biasness there whatsoever. And to me, it was the right decision. But in Europe, those that are given, and we saw that Martinez against Real Sociedad, where it hit his thigh and bounced up onto his arm when they gave a penalty, which is a disgrace in my opinion. It should never be a penalty if it hits another part of your body before it hits your arm. There's nothing you can do about that. What are you supposed to do? Cut your arms off? So I thought it was the right decision. And yeah, Martinez had an excellent return to the starting 11. And yeah, Shesko has a lot to work on in terms of his
Yeah.
finishing.
agree with all that, Kyle. Yeah, I suppose if we talk about Chesko first, yeah, I think you're right. I think he's just having more time on the ball. Also noticed commented on, I think it might have been, I can't remember who it was in the Sky Sports studio before it might have been Keane again. And Neville maybe before the Villa game, he was sort of doing keepy ups in the warm up and stuff, and you can see the footwork that he has for a big man of 6'5" is absolutely brilliant. So maybe he's sort of one, used to having more time on the ball, and two, likes the ball at his feet because he is so good with the ball at his feet, and he's comfortable taking the ball on and and dribbling and stuff, and that's all grand. But unfortunately, like you said, they're in the Premier League. Often you're up against defenders and teams who are just not going to give you that time on the ball, and you have to be thinking as a striker, one touch and finish, or even better, first time finish. If you're in the right position. Not taking a touch. Van de Ven was the prime example, and Van de Ven is good and he's quick. But I noticed in that moment, he almost like he either had to go across. He should have either went across Van de Ven to his right, which would have meant that the only way Van de Ven could have got the ball would have been to foul him, and that would have been a penalty. Or he should have hit it quicker, and he didn't do either of those things. He took it the wrong way, and he wanted to have more time, and you just don't get that. So yeah, I think that's it really. I think giving him a bye ball, and I personally still think he's great because of everything I just listed. He's good with the ball at his feet. He's big. He's strong. He holds the ball up well. His all-round play is good. So some people are getting very impatient with him. I think that's a bit premature. But I do think that he needs to score more goals. We bought him to score goals. He's been billed as a goal scorer because he has been a goal scorer, elsewhere. And I feel like we need to see more of him at Man United. We bought him to replace Højlund, who wasn't scoring enough goals, and that's been a problem we had last year, was not scoring enough goals. And at the moment, he's not really improving us on that. In terms then of Martinez, that to me was never a penalty. Not in a million years was that a penalty. And even Jimmy Carragher, who, as we know, has no real love for Manchester United, in the studio said, shouldn't even have been a debate. Don't even know why VAR really had to get involved. That's not a penalty. Absolutely not. like you said, Kyle, it hit his arm. It hit his arm. He's wrestling with the other attacker. His arms are out because of that. He hasn't put them out because of the ball is there. The ball has absolutely struck him and just happened to bounce off his arm a couple of times, or roll up his arm, whatever way you want to put it. But no way was that intentional. It's never a penalty. Never a penalty at all. Right decision, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. But as I say, I was a little worried when the VAR was slowing it down, and it
Yeah,
always
no,
concerns me.
absolutely.
Um,
But no, right decision in the end, thankfully.
and he put in a captain's performance last night. He was the standing captain with Bruno being injured, and I thought that's 100% the right call as well. As he is a leader, there's no doubt about that.
He's definitely a leader. Yeah, I just he is another player, and I just really like at Man United. I know unfortunately when we're not winning all the time, there's we don't love every single player in the team like maybe we had done in the good old days when we were very successful. But he is one of the players that I really like. I think he's got those leadership qualities, like you said, Kyle. He's strong, he's tough. He's great feet. He's really composed on the ball. He's got good skill. We even seen him playing midfield against Villa, and or even last night, like you said, pinging those long balls about. He's a great passer. He's just an all-round, really good quality footballer. And he definitely. I just hope he can remain injury-free and we get more out of him because we haven't been lucky enough to get enough out of him. But I don't, with some players, you think they're out, and it's a mentality thing, and they're not up for it. I don't think that's ever the case with him. He is always up for it. He's just been unlucky with injuries, so hopefully that can change.
Yeah, every fan I know loves him, and the only
Yeah, he's great.
caveat is that he's always injured.
Yeah.
So hopefully he can have a sustained period now of no injuries, and fingers crossed. Um, yeah, remember that clip I showed you from like a Europa League game where he's being pressed by forwards of another team. I can't remember which match it was. Might have been Leon or someone, and he nutmegs the first forward. Then the next forward, he does a drag back and takes him out of the game, and then he's into midfield. That's a quality that he has. And
Absolutely. He could play. He really could play centre midfield. If you were stuck and had a game and you thought I need him for centre midfield, you wouldn't look at him and go, "Oh no, this is going to go wrong." You would go, "He probably did a good enough job there." I would say that he would. He's yeah, great quality.
yeah, and he's just like he's like a typical South American. He's full blooded. He's all in. Um, he he's a man who gives us absolute 100% in every game.
Yeah,
And he's a bit like Vidic in a way. That's why he picks up injuries, because he picks up contact injuries because he's diving into challenges and getting involved in physical confrontations, and you're going to pick up leg injuries whenever you do that. Seeing it happen to Vidic. He jumping into challenges and then there's an impact injury and that's him out for a few months. But
yeah.
he's gonna keep doing that. He's never going to change. You can't tell a man to not be himself. Unfortunately, there's always going to be that risk when you jump into challenges like that.
Yeah,
Um,
and you wouldn't want him to be any different. You know what I mean? I guess the only thing somebody like that can learn is when to do that when you absolutely need to, and when to maybe not do it. But yeah, if you had to err on the side of being too much contact versus less, I would say go for too much because yeah, that's just always better. So yeah, no, it's hard to argue, but he's a great player.
yeah. Uh, so it's absolutely brilliant to have him back, and I'm looking forward to having Delict back again. He's had a superb season, and obviously Maguire. He's always a good option to have, especially in the opposition's penalty area, as we've seen against Liverpool. So it'd be great to have all the options available to us, and be interesting to see who plays. Um, and especially if we're going to play a back four from now on, there's only two centre back spots, so it makes it even more competitive for those roles. And you'd assume Martinez is just going to play, but who's going to partner him? Is it going to be Delict? Who's going to be Heaven? It's going to be Maguire. Who is it? It's great to have options. Apparently Maguire's going to play again this month, and there's only one more game this month, so we expect to see Maguire available then against Wolves. Um, Maguire probably not a starter for me unless we have injuries, but he's always a great option to bring on, even in as an auxiliary striker at the end of games if we need to, because we know he's lethal in the air. Yeah, so us that's that'll be interesting to see what Amarim does, because Heaven is playing so well, but Delict had been playing so well until he got injured. So what does he do when they're both available? Yeah,
I
so there's a
know.
real conundrum there for the manager. He'd probably go with the senior player though. One day, I would have thought that's
I see.
probably
You
the
always
most
think,
likely outcome.
yeah, you always think that, and it's hard to argue against that. One thing that obviously I don't really like to see, or you think is a bit more risk, is two young players together. But the fact that Martinez is back means that it would be a senior player with a not so senior player. So actually, in some ways, that can still work. So yeah, it's hard to say, but you're right, Kyle. I mean, it's hard to see past the lick, and he was, yeah, and he'd been a wee bit maligned himself, I suppose, for a while. But I really feel like, yeah, before he went out, he was really playing really well. So yeah, probably would be the lick again. But yeah, what great options we have at the moment, like you said there. You know, you didn't have an unbelievable young player coming through Euro, still learning and still, he's going to be a great player too. Already is a great player. So yeah, great options to have. And Maguire obviously as well.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal when Yarrow and Heaven were playing together in defence. Yeah, two young players, as you say, is not the ideal scenario for any
No,
team. And one of the reasons why, and I'm sure there's many reasons why, Amram has decided to change to a back four, and I think it might have been to do with Yarrow against Villa when we see him getting dragged into right back areas. He should have made a tackle when Morgan Rogers was picking the ball up near the touchline with his back to goal. That's the time to get on him and make a tackle. Don't let him get turned and running at you. That's when you're in trouble. A player of that quality. And we see him with a second goal. He was afraid to make a tackle because he gave a penalty away against Palace. So he's really lacking in confidence, Euro, at the moment. But against Lille, he's not used to being dragged into right back areas because he's playing in a back four. And it might help Yarrow as well. I know he didn't start last night, but it might help him playing in the back four as a right side centre back. He's not getting dragged into wide areas, which doesn't suit him. So it might be another reason why Amram was thinking, it might suit a lot of players here if I just go to a back four. So I'm just thinking while we're talking on air, that might be another reason why he decided to change his formation.
no,
Um,
I think you make a fair point. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think that is it. I think when you're playing as a centre back, it's very different in terms of the areas that you're going to move into and the kind of the space that you're generally going to occupy. And then therein the types of players you're going to come up against and what they're going to try to do. So obviously a player, when you're a centre back is coming towards you, he's generally going to be looking at goal. You're always kind of thinking he's always wants to just get inside. If you're playing against a player on the wing, it's different. He's going to maybe try to go outside you and whip a cross in or knock the ball back, or he's going to come inside you and have a shot. I just think it just adds a slightly different dynamic. And if a player, like you said, like Euro, isn't used to being in those positions, it just means that he has to think. And at the Premier League level, when the quality's so high, you almost don't have time to think. It has to be instinctive. And I think with him not used to being in those positions, it won't be completely instinctive. And that's he kind of showed up a wee bit against Morgan Rogers, a couple of times against Villa. So yeah, I think you're right, kind of. I think that's a fair point that actually playing in a back four removes that kind of element of the game for him. Having a right sided defender beside him will help. So yeah, I think it's a fair point.
Another really exciting aspect of having a back four is that we'll have options in every position. I mean, we'll have about five centre half options for the two positions, and then two for each fullback position as well. So Luke Shaw is a natural left back. Dorgu, if he plays like he did last night, he's going to be another really great option for us. And then a right back, obviously Dallo played last night because he's the only one who's available. But after AFCON, Mazarahi, having him as a right back, is a perfect position for him as well. I know he's as part of the back three, he's been playing as the right side centre back himself, and he's been comfortable in that position too because he is a fullback. Um, so yeah, we're going to have at least two options for every position in a back four. So I don't know why we didn't do this a long time ago. Um,
Yeah, that's it, and that's the strength and depth that you always want, and I mean that's ideally that's what you want across the pitch is really good top level backup in every single position. We haven't always managed to have that over the years, but if we have it now, and I think it's a wonderful thing. I don't think it can be anything but a positive.
So we just get on to some comments here from Sports Obsessed, and he says first half from United was spot on from Ruben. Once Mount went off, United's plan went out the window, and we just had to try and hold on to the lead that we had. And yeah, that was more or less what happened. United's attacking display in the first half was excellent. Should have got more goals, but didn't. And the second half, substitutions were kind of forced upon us, and because he had to manage the minutes of certain players, and Mount picked up a knock, and our bench is very weak at the moment because our squad is so stretched with the players missing, and obviously there's going to be a drop off, and Amram just decided that defense was the best option for us, with so many players missing, and if we've seen him do that before, and it's resulted in the other team scoring and us not getting the points. But last night we got the points, so we have to give praise to the manager and the team for seeing it out. It was a gutsy second half performance,
100%.
and Sports Obsessed also says that Xerxes' head is in Rome. That's exactly what I was saying. That's the way it looked to me. And I saw a clip after the game where he's talking to the the Newcastle centre forward, the German guy, um, and they're being really friendly together. And I know Roy Keane hates this as well. I don't like seeing our players being overly friendly with opposition players. I don't like that, to be honest. It's just very much a modern thing that I refuse to get used to. Um, and I've seen Xerxes do that before. I'm not keen on that. Um,
I think respect is all right, but and all that kind of stuff, and but I think, yeah, when you're in the heat of battle, it should be poker face. Like, it should be, what I mean. It should be, you're my enemy for the day. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I know it was after the game, but I just thought it was a wee bit uh, too over friendly, really. And Sports Obsessed says that Ugarte was solid against Newcastle. There's a guy who's come in for a lot of criticism, particularly for his performance against Villa, on that prior to today, or prior to last night. Um, the last 7 games that Ugarte has started, United have lost all 7. He's obviously broke that record now, which is more than delighted to see that. He played out of necessity because Manu and Bruno are unavailable, and the only 2 senior midfielders that we have at the moment is the 2 defensive ones, Ugarte and Casemiro. Maybe that's another reason why the manager decided to go with the back four and play the 4-2-3-1, because it would have suited them as well. But yeah, I thought he had a better game last night. I don't think he was outstanding by any means, but I did see him winning tackles last night, which was good. He's still not good enough on the ball. When even when he makes a simple 10 yard pass, it's under hit, or it's played behind the man, and yeah, uh, I do think he's someone that needs to be moved on. But last night was a marked improvement.
Yeah, I agree. Ugarte is a strange one. Before we bought him, all the stuff I heard about him in terms of his tackling percentage and all, I thought, this guy's going to be brilliant. He's going to be like Fernandinho, or going way back, Makaleli would have been. This midfield destroyer. He's going to win everything, and he's going to break a ball to play all the time, and this is going to be great. And he hasn't really done. He hasn't done that much of that, and he doesn't offer that much on the ball. So he kind of doesn't bring a hell of a lot to the game at the moment. Obviously, then when Amarim, given Amarim's work before, I thought eventually it's going to come good. And I remember Amarim, I think it was back in October, did allude to that himself in the press and saying that Manuel Ugarte is not quite showing what he showed for me in times gone by. I think he might have, I mean, I'll have to look back over it, but I think he maybe even alluded to not just in games, but even his general attitude and his level of professionalism almost. And maybe that's just because confidence is low, perhaps, or he's struggling with the Premier League, and that's starting to get to him. But yeah, I still think I would want to see a bit more out of him. Whatever it is not quite working. He's not the player that we all thought
Yeah,
that he would have been.
yeah. We heard from the Athletic that in the same team meeting where he told Garnacho to find a new club, he also said to Ugarte that I don't recognise you anymore,
Mm.
and that's a pretty damning indictment. Um, was he referring to that? I think Larry Whitwell, elaborated on that by saying that he feels as if Ugarte's got too comfortable at United, and that's not the player that I saw at Sporting.
And if that's what it is, then he's not the only one. We've seen that
Mm,
far too often over the last number of years. Players being allowed to get big wages and not have to do much for it and get way too comfortable. And United have let that happen all too often. So it's if that's the case, I'm very sorry to hear it. But Amarim, good on him recognising it and calling it out. And he doesn't seem like the type of guy who will accept that. So yeah.
yeah, and far too often I've been critical of managers at United and elsewhere that they have favourites, especially when they've had this player at a previous club. But fair play to him, everybody thought that because he played under Amram before that he would get special treatment and he would play every game. That hasn't happened, and he's been critical of him being too comfortable and not recognising him anymore. So for fair play to Amram that he's not made him a favourite, even though you'd expect him to. We've seen how loyal Ten Hag was to Dutch players and Dutch league players, but Amram's very much he's seen something and he's called it out. So I'm glad to see that. I have to give him
Yeah.
credit. I have to give him credit for that.
No, absolutely. And just as a general point, and I agree with you, Kyle, you do sometimes see that. But if I'm to take the personalities out of it, I hope that the only reason that managers have favourites is because they're players who have actually performed for them in the past. I like to believe that no manager at any stage of their career is happy to carry passengers in their team just because they like their personality or I don't know, think they're good crack or something. I would like to believe that favourites are because they've seen what they can do and that they're always just living in hope that that will happen again.
Mhm.
So it's a case of when is it time to realize that's no longer going to happen and to cut the cord, and maybe that's the difficulty. So that's, I guess, I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
But yeah, either way, fair play to Amarim for saying no, this isn't working, and I'm just going to have to tell you straight. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. Managers probably have an unconscious bias towards certain players of the same nationality, for example. Um, it's not. I don't think it's as you say, it's probably not nothing to do with the fact that they like their personality and like that they're good crack or anything like that. Um, or that they're good at as the media tried to say about Fergie and Michael Owen that because they had a shared interest in horses that it was something to do. I refuse to believe that. I think he
yeah.
signed him because he's a goal scorer. You
Exactly.
know.
Yeah, that's it. Because at the end of the day, at its core, these managers want to win. Obviously, that's their job, and that's what they're competitors. So I find it hard to believe. Yeah, and you're right. Maybe there's a bit of an unconscious bias there with nationality and maybe having shared culture and things that can things in common they can talk about, which is fair enough. But ultimately, like I said, I still think that managers want players who are going to help them to win. And maybe some players they'll write them
And
off quicker than others, but eventually, you know they're not going to put up
and
with people who are dragging them down. I find it hard to believe.
and especially when the manager's under pressure, he's going to go to players that he trusts. You know. And players that he's worked with before are generally players that they trust. But in terms of Ugarte and Amarim, that is not the case. That seems to be our relationship that's coming to an end. And I think like Xerxes, I think most fans would agree that it's probably time to move on from Ugarte. It's been a bit of an expensive mistake after only a year and a half. I don't think he's going to cut it in the Premier League. You know, far too many times he's picking up the ball, he doesn't know what to do with it, and then all of a sudden he's surrounded. He loses the ball, and he's looking for a free kick. He doesn't run back. He's on his knees appealing for the free kick, while the other team are breaking up the field. And you're like, what are you doing? He did that against West Ham last season. I'm sure it probably pissed off me, and it probably pissed off Amarim, where he lost the ball in the centre of the pitch, was appealing for a free kick, didn't get it, and Jared Bowen scored.
Yeah,
While he was still appealing for a free kick. That's not what you want to see from your number six. You want
no,
to see your number six absolutely busting a gut to get back.
yeah.
You know.
The old saying that they used to have in the 90s was play to the whistle. You know what I mean? Forget
Mm,
about what you think you've got. Play till you get what you're going to get or not going to get. Do you know what I mean? Don't be sitting on the floor with no whistle going, the game continuing, hoping that somehow the referee's going to change his mind 5 seconds later and blow it up. It's not going to happen. You play until you hear that whistle. So yeah, no, I think you know, I like what I thought he was about. I like what he's done before. I like when we bought him what he could have delivered, but it does look like an expensive mistake. Like you said, Kyle. I mean, a year. I feel like anybody coming to the Premier League for the first time needs a year. And even though I like you said before, with Shesko, you know, sometimes we don't have many options and we get a bit desperate and you go, well, we need somebody now, and you start to almost get impatient with them. But realistically, I think a year is a fair enough point in time. But you know, a year and a half in, not really seeing much improvement. Amarim talking that even in the background, he's not even working hard. So you need to understand if he's working hard, it's not quite translating the games yet. But saying he doesn't recognise him sounds like it's the attitude that's changed and all those things, and that doesn't really bode well. Which does make you feel like it's eventually going to come to an end. Yeah.
Mm, yeah, it's quite an extraordinary statement to make, and it's not something you expect a manager to say to someone that he's worked with before. But there we are. Um, I seen a recent report that so Ten Hag wanted to sign Delict, and the board weren't keen on him. Um, but Ten Hag eventually got his way. And I think that is something that I'm happy that he got his way. And not often to say this, but I'm happy he got his way on that one because I think it turned out to be a good signing. Um, but yeah, apparently Ten Hag really had to fight with the board on that one. Yeah. But when they decided to keep him on, and it turned out to be a mistake as well because they sacked him in October of that third season. Um, they decided to keep him on after interviewing other managers, including Thomas Tuchel and Thomas Frank. Uh, and they changed all his coaches as well. And I don't know whether he agreed to that or not. I think your man Mitchell van der Gaag wanted to go be a manager anyway, and maybe that forced his hand. But they brought in all these new coaches, and they changed basically everything except him. And I thought, this is not a recipe for success. But in order to keep him sweet, they had to bring in a couple more Dutch players as well as their own signings. But I tell you what, De Ligt was someone that he wanted, and that's worked out well so far. And Ugarte was something that the board wanted, and that hasn't worked out. So that's interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think for once on the podcast, Kyle, I'm going to keep my criticism of the board to a minimum. I know I've been heavily critical in the past. Um, but yeah, look, I honestly believe there's been lots of poor decisions made at Manchester United board level since the day or as you know, people say, Chris, you're a broken record, since Ferguson left and since his name's going to be head now. David Gill left. I mean, there's been many poor decisions made at board level, and this is the thing about it is that, and that's why often I'll defend managers when other people don't, because I will always just in my gut say the manager's always the man whose head's on the chopping block for every single decision that gets made. But until you really know who made what decision, it's very hard to say, is the manager really the problem? And you keep hearing every now and again these things that say, no, the manager was right and the board was wrong. But until you hear these backstories, you never know who made what decision. But the manager, unfortunately, is always the man who has to front up, whether it was his choice or somebody else's. He has to front up and take the blame. And that's slightly unfair to the manager. They all know that comes with the territory, and they get often well compensated when they do get sacked. So they kind of take that risk. But it's why often I don't jump in and say the manager needs to go, because you just never know who's got it wrong. But that's a
Yeah,
debate for another day, I guess.
yeah. Ten Hag wanted to keep McTominay, who's done unbelievably well at Napoli and even been nominated for a Ballon d'Or. And we signed Ugarte, with the money that we got for McTominay, which just is absolutely appalling decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that I can see what the logic was in that way. McTominay wasn't a starter every week, and we needed a defensive midfielder, but they got it all wrong. They signed the wrong defensive midfielder, and they got rid of a player who was getting you 10 goals every season. So it turned out. I think I was me myself. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I think it was. I was saying myself that I thought McTominay isn't good enough to get in the United starting 11, and he isn't going to play as in his preferred position, which is number 10, given the options that we have. And it's probably the right time to take the money for him. I didn't mind that aspect of it, despite how well he's done at Napoli. He is playing at a lower level. We have to factor that in too. But Ugarte was very much the wrong signing. But what I will say about last night, and the reason why one of the people commenting here says that he was solid last night because that second half probably suited Ugarte. United without the ball, you know, rearguard action, constantly having to make tackles and make interceptions. That is his game. But
Yeah.
dominating possession is not Ugarte's game, and
Right.
that's why that second half probably suited him. Um,
100%. And to be honest, at the time, even when we signed him, I remember people basically saying that he offers very little going forward and he's not a great passer. Like that was a well known weakness to his game, and I remember even you and I having conversations and probably being optimistic and watching videos of him making the odd good pass he did make and go, oh, he's not that bad, but everybody globally recognized his game's all about tackling and defense. He's not brilliant going forward. And again, maybe that's been part of the issue is that he's expected to be able to be better on the ball under Amram's system, and he just doesn't really and never really had it in his game. But then caveat, obviously, however he worked with Amram before, Amram was very happy with him. So that tells you that it's partly maybe inherent weaknesses and a poor fit in his game, but there is also clearly that whole scenario has clearly got to his mindset, and there's something's changed there. Which is and to me that as both people say that's the bigger problem really is that he's not trying to change. He's just saying this is not for me, and he maybe wants out himself, which is not good.
yeah, it's certainly not the ideal midfield that we want to see, Casemiro and Ugarte, but I appreciate that our options were limited, because it's not exactly the most creative midfield that you'll ever see in the Premier League. But last night, I suppose it's the defending United in the second half, defending in numbers that probably suited Ugarte, but whenever we're playing when we're on the front foot, he's not going to be a player that suited to us. I didn't really. I know it was known that he wasn't great on the ball, but I didn't think it was as bad as this. Now he's like some of the passing against Villa was alarming to me. They couldn't even make a simple 10-yard pass. It was completely under hit and just give the ball away to a Villa player. I'm like, what are you doing? You just he just doesn't look like he belongs at this level. But we'll move on from Ugarte, and I appreciate we've talked about him too much. So there's a Dutch guy on social media on X.com. He's called Martin, and he has Van Nistelrooy in a Holland shirt as his profile picture. And he put up that clip of Dallo missing the chance last night from Martinez's long ball, and he says, "I've heard this statement made many times. I genuinely can't understand how Diogo Dallo still plays for Manchester United." I know people just get so frustrated with him. That chance last night was similar to no was it was actually even worse in Ten Hag's last game in charge against West Ham. Diallo Diogo Dallo, he put the ball over the bar when the keeper was off his line. The keeper wasn't on his line. It was an open goal, and he put it over the bar. Now, I appreciate last night the keeper was there, and it was slightly harder from that respect, but he should have hit the target, and he didn't. Um, yeah, he could have saved Ten Hag's job if he scored a simple open goal, but he didn't. He's
Yeah,
just not someone you can rely on, and he takes these
no,
long throws. And I've seen likes of Brentford and Everton doing these long throws, and they're really good. They get right into the mixer, and they cause havoc for defenses. D- Dallo insists on taking these long throws, and quite often he's not getting much distance on them at all. And it just that's kind of just sums up how he thinks he's better than he is, and the long throws is symbolic of that. The way he thinks he's good at long throws, but he's not. Um,
yeah. Well,
yeah, I think he's a player that's outside his welcome. If I'm being brutally honest.
yeah, he is a weird one because certain managers seem to like him. He obviously gets in the Portugal team, and Portugal now. I'll not pretend to know exactly who all the options are for his position in the Portugal team, but the Portugal team generally is a pretty good team.
Well, he occasionally starts for Portugal, but I think João Cancelo usually starts in that area. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's yeah. As I say, I don't. My knowledge of the Portugal team wouldn't be wonderful, but managers do seem to like him. Like you say, he's outstayed his welcome, but probably because managers consistently have seen something in him, enough to give him more chances and extend his contract, etc. but fans are generally, often just going, "Why is this guy still here?" So he does have attributes to his game. If I'm, you and I have discussed him a lot, Kyle, and you're not a fan. I at times am a fan, other times I'm not. I wouldn't say I love him like I would about other players, but I can see that he's got some attributes. But yes, he score a good goal, and you'll go, like, that's a good goal, well taken. That's a good goal. Nobody can argue. But then he'll do five other things defensively poorly, and the game will really, really, really frustrate you. And you'll go, but he's a defender first and foremost, so that's what he should be doing as his bread and butter. And what he does going forward should kind of be a bonus. And maybe it's because he offers something going forward. He's quite quick. He's agile, and he gets up and down the pitch. Is maybe why managers do like him. But he is so even his good attributes, like you say, going forward, he can miss an open goal, and defensively, he does. He looks just a bit overconfident sometimes. He just looks a bit too like this is all too easy for me, and I don't really need to put the effort in. Unlike somebody like Mazraoui or Martinez, who'll be full blooded and will go in 100% every time. Dallo looks like, I've got this, a bit like Luke Shaw does to me sometimes, which I also find a bit frustrating. Almost like I don't need to try hard because I'll just read it or whatever. Um, so yeah, I can see why he's Marmite. Um, I don't feel strongly about him either way. There's players I really don't think are up to it. There's players I think are absolutely definitely great. He for me is in that in between. Sometimes I think, he's got some good attributes, and other times I go, oh, he's very frustrating. If he went, I don't think it would be a huge blow to United. I think they could replace him with somebody better. But I don't think he's stinking the place out as much as some other players are. But I know you feel very strongly, and plenty of others do, are really, really not a fan of him, which is fair enough. I would argue.
Yeah, but I actually feel in recent weeks his attacking output has been better. He's been getting, like, he got a goal, and I know he got an assist in another game. And but last night was a horrendous effort on goal
That
after
was
that ball
poor.
from Martinez.
It was very, very poor. There's no two
And
ways.
he always gives me the impression. First and foremost, he's wearing number 2 on his back. He's a fullback, and he forgets that at times. He's venturing into centre forward positions. He gives me the impression of someone that sees defending as a chore rather than his job. Um, we see,
Absolutely. Yeah, I've said before. So part of me, I think I've said this on this podcast before, Kyle. There's times I think he's better as a right midfielder, because then he can be allowed to do what he naturally wants to do, which is try and get forward. But the problem is he's not quite good enough to be a right midfielder either. But in some ways there's less liability in him there whenever he's not actually being tasked to defend, because, like you said, it doesn't seem to naturally fit him.
yeah, mm, you know, we've got our attacking players on the pitch. We need our defenders to do their jobs, and he's one of them. And often
I
he
agree.
abandons that role. And it, the worst example of the lot was against Tottenham last season when he allowed Brennan Johnson to run in unchallenged at the back stick and top in. Like Van der Ven ran through our whole team, ran past Ugarte, what a surprise, and then crosses it into the 6 yard box. Brennan Johnson tops it in, and Diogo Dallo did not pick up the run from Brennan Johnson. And then before, as Brennan Johnson was about to top it in to the empty net, Dallo's already apologising for not picking him up. He hadn't even scored yet, and he's already apologising for not picking him up. And you're like, why didn't you just pick him up? I don't want your apology. Just track the run. How about do your job, mate? You know?
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I say, I totally get the frustration, and I do. I see it myself, and it winds me up. There's no two ways about it. Yeah, yeah. He just doesn't seem to want to defend, or he just, he doesn't think. Like I say, like somebody like Mazraoui, who I think he was a great defender and seems to be defense first, and then get forward and release the ball to somebody that's I've done my job. Whereas Dallo's the opposite. Like you said, he wants to really be an attacker. He wants to be having shots. He wants, it's almost like the defensive side kind of doesn't float his boat, which is, as I say, a big problem when your job's primarily to defend and you've got number 2 on your back. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree.
But I would, Trent Alexander-Arnold is often criticised for his defending, but his attacking output
It was
is
so good.
been exceptional.
Yeah,
But Dallo thinks he's on Alexander-Arnold, but he's not. His attacking output, he only gets like maybe 1 or 2 goals a season, maybe 3 assists a season. That's not at the level that you
No.
need to be at if you're going to be a renowned attacking fullback.
Yeah.
Um, so I think he's lacking and doesn't want to defend either. And going forward, he doesn't do enough to compensate for that.
Yeah.
So that's where I am with him. I think
No.
he's very lucky to be a regular in United starting 11. To me, he's a squad player at best, but I'd be quite happy to move him on. But um, I thought that bringing in a Portuguese manager would result in him playing most games, and that's the way it's transpired. And that's the unconscious bias again there that we talked about earlier on the show. Um, apparently, somebody done research on this, and yeah, I think it was Samuel Luckhurst who says that they actually have the same great grandfather.
Oh yes, I think yes,
Yeah,
I think I did. Yeah, I think I heard
yeah,
about that. They're actually related. They're like distant cousins, basically. Yeah, that is actually true. Look, like I say, I will obviously draw a line under Dallo at some point, but if he was moved on, I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't be saying this is a travesty. We need to keep him. I guess I don't dislike him maybe the same level you do, Kai, but I understand it, and I guess yeah. I wouldn't be, shouting to defend him and say he needs to stay. I don't think I would.
yeah. But just want to be clear that I don't dislike him as a person. Just maybe not a fan
Yeah,
of
no,
him
sorry, of course,
as a
absolutely.
footballer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry if I
Because I know
incorrect
he
that.
does a lot of charity work, so I definitely don't dislike him as a person. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
no, oh no,
Um,
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
um, yeah, Mateus Cunha, particularly in the first half, another really impressive performance. What I love about him, and you've seen, we'll go back to Roy Keane's comments again. Keane has been saying in recent weeks that Cunha is a United player, and I know what he means by that because he carries the ball so well. He takes the fight to the opposition, and he was doing a lot of that last night. The only thing that frustrates me is that when he carries the ball from his own half into the attacking third, he shoots too often. There's a teammate in space. Give it to him. He did that last night in the second half. He was running through the middle, um, dribbling past so many Newcastle players. There was a player on wide left who was in acres of space, and if he'd played it to him, he would have had a one-on-one with the keeper basically. But he took the shot himself and he scuffed it, and you're like, that's just the one aspect of his game that frustrates me. But overall, I think he's been really good recently.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. I do actually know what you mean. There's a few times I've thought exactly the same myself. He sometimes needs to be a bit less selfish, but all in all, he is one of the players I really like. I think he's been an absolutely brilliant signing along with Mbumo. I think he's been absolutely brilliant. He's everything you want in a United player. And another player that I really like too, and this is no surprise to you, Kyle, is Mason Mount for the exact same reasons. He's tenacious, he's intelligent, he's a solid Premier League level player. Good on the ball, runs his heart out. Yeah, like Cunha, very direct, forward thinking, wants to get the ball, wants to push, wants to put, go at defenses. Yeah, similar to a couple, three great players there, including Bumo. I think they're top drawer.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a coincidence that United's performance levels dropped off as soon as Mount went off at half time.
No,
Did
definitely
you
not.
notice that as soon as the second half kicked off, Newcastle were all over us, and we didn't see
Yeah,
that in the first half? No.
no, absolutely. It was stark. I mean, it was immediate and stark. Yeah, I mean, oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can see that for sure. Mount is he is a great quality footballer. He reminds me of almost like a European footballer in many ways. He's one of those like Dutch type players almost. He's wonderful feet. He reads the game really well, really tidy. Ball stays really close to him. He runs hard. Do you know what I mean? He's kind of he's not. I don't know how you can describe him. He just does everything really, really well. He's like an 8 out of 10 at everything in many ways. I think he's really, really solid. I really like him.
And
Yeah.
and every manager that's worked with him loves him. And
Yeah, I
Amorim
can
has
see
actually
why.
said that twice.
Yeah, I can see why. Yeah, you can see why he runs. He absolutely busts his guts, and he's great technically. Yeah, he's just a solid all rounder. Really, really good player.
Yeah, Amorim has declared his love for him twice. That's saying something.
Yeah, but I can see why. He's brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
and
he's great player.
Ten Hag signed him, and I think it was a Ten Hag signing because he actually had a loan spell in the Eredivisie when he was
He
about
did.
19 or 20.
That's right. He worked with Ten
Um,
Hag too. Yeah, once again, just another manager who recognised a really good player. Yeah.
um, Yeah, and Thomas Tuchel loved him at Chelsea, and Lampard as well. He gave him his debut at Chelsea and worked with him at Derby when he was on loan there as well. And Gareth Southgate always had him in the team whenever he was fit and available.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
hasn't
he
played
is.
much.
He's one of those players in some ways was underrated. I thought, but underrated, but not underrated. He was never the one gets, and that is how he is. He doesn't that often get all the plaudits and the headlines, because but he will be on the pitch in 8 out of 10 solidly every time and do everything well. He'll do everything, tackle, work, carry the ball, passes, shots. He's got good goals, and I think his shooting instincts are actually good. He hits the ball early. Often, sometimes he's just a solid at everything.
Yeah, hopefully he's able to play the next game, and he hasn't picked up
Yeah,
too
fingers
serious a knock
crossed.
there.
Fingers crossed. I think we need
Because
him.
we're already depleted at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, and that's not a slight on Jack Fletcher. He played the entirety of the second half. And he came on and he had to work his socks off, and obviously he did that. I'm
Yeah,
sure
absolutely.
his twin brother was jealous that he had to sit on the bench for the whole game, and he got on. I'd say there'd be a
Yeah,
lot of sibling rivalry there.
absolutely.
Um,
His time will come to him, sure.
yeah, and the proud dad is sitting in the stand. So I know it's the idea, when we're talking on WhatsApp about this, that it probably makes you feel old that you were at the game against Ball where Darren Fletcher made his debut, and it probably makes you feel old that now his sons are in the United team.
It
But
does. Thanks for reminding me of that, Kyle.
the, but I will caveat that by saying that I think they were born when Darren Fletcher was like 20.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
I'm only kidding, obviously. But yeah, well, it was weird. I know I texted you at the time because, yeah, I haven't got to Old Trafford in my life as often as I would have liked, but I do remember one of my early trips to Old Trafford. I think it was 2003, if I'm not wrong, or maybe
yeah.
2004. I think it was 2003 against FC Basel in the Champions League. I remember it well. I think Gary Neville scored on the night. And I remember Kieran Richardson made his debut and Darren Fletcher both made their debut on the same night. I remember it well, and Fletcher was magnificent. I remember thinking, this guy's going to have a good career at United, and yeah, obviously he had a pretty darn good career. Yeah, so it does make me feel old, but great to see that. Clearly United men through and through, United family through and through, and good to see two young players carrying that tradition on. It's great.
And just to make us feel extra old, Wayne Rooney's son playing for the under 18s.
Yeah, I know, I know, I
Um,
know. Yeah.
really.
Again, thanks, Kyle. I really am feeling old now.
So just a quick rundown of the player ratings, and yeah, Lemans, yeah, does all the basics really well. Never makes a glaring mistake. I know he's let in a couple of free kicks that he should have done better with, but I don't understand the criticism from some fans. As you've said off air, um, fans are expecting probably David De Gea making all these cat-like reflexes, but I thought Lemens has been a massive upgrade on Onana and Bayindir because he comes out and he claims crosses even through a crowd of players. He was doing it last night, big long balls, big hoofs into the middle, and there's like three Newcastle players, three United players all jumping for the ball, but he comes in and gathers it, and nudges them all out of the way, and he makes a clean catch. And when there's like a shot that's straight at him, how many times have we seen Onana spill it, and then there's a tap in for the opposition? He never spills it. Lemens, touch wood, so like he's not making spectacular saves that often. He did make a couple against Bournemouth to prevent us from losing that game at the end, but he never makes him a glaring obvious mistake, and he does the basic fundamentals really well, like claiming crosses, you know, you know, not spilling the ball, and that's all we ask for. When you've been used to 2 years of Onana and Bayindir, you're getting a goalkeeper that just is just solid and doesn't make any mistakes. I am more than happy with that. So I would give him a 7 out of 10 last night. So
Absolutely. I think that's all you need from a goalkeeper, Kyle. I've said this so many times before. Maybe I am just old fashioned. Am I thinking about 90s football or something? But this whole stuff about, oh, they need to be great with their feet and they need to be like midfielders and all. No, I'm sorry. Just give me a goalkeeper who does everything well, is a solid 7 out of 10, like you said, and everything. Doesn't make mistakes very often, will say the things you expect them to say. Will, carry the ball well, come out and claim crosses. give me that all day long over, these fancy modern need to do a wee bit of this and a wee bit of that, which Onana was supposed to be and didn't do well at any of it. Yeah, solid all day long will do me for sure.
Yeah, and Dallo, yeah, missed that big opportunity to take the pressure off us. But I suppose he was part of a defensive unit that kept the clean sheet, so I'll give him a 6. Ian Haven, the official man of the match, and deservedly so, and the stats bear that out. So an 8 out of 10 for him. Martinez, another 8 out of 10. His first start in about 10 months, and he was excellent. Um, Luke Shaw, back to his usual position of left back. It's been a while, and yeah, and part of it a defensive unit that kept Newcastle out, which is no easy feat. So give him a 7 out of 10. Casemiro couldn't believe himself that he's being subbed on the hour mark, and a defender coming on for him. Um, and that handed the initiative even more to Newcastle. So 7 out of 10 for Casemiro. We have the stats actually show that we concede far less goals when he's on the pitch than when he's off the pitch. I talked to you about the stats with Ugarte, constantly losing games when he starts. Obviously, last night he broke that record, which is I'm happy to see. But yeah, Casemiro a 7. Ugarte, I give him a 6 because it was a massive improvement on what we've seen in his last 7 appearances. And as I say, the defensive rearguard action probably suited his game more. Mason Mount came off at half time, so I give him a 6, but uh, he done well in the first half and was a big part of why United played well. Um, Patrick Dorgu, I give him an 8. His first goal for United, and what a goal it was, and he gained massive confidence from that. And just love his humility in his post-match interview as well. So 8 out of 10. Kuna, excellent for United. Excellent carrier of the ball, just a wee bit selfish at times. And we want to see him get more goals. I know he's got 3 so far. I like him to add to that pretty soon. So 7 out of 10 for him. Benjamin Sesko taken off after the hour mark, probably managing his minutes as he's just back from injury. Missed big opportunities, but he is doing well. And in other aspects of his game, holding the ball up and winning flick-ons and good with his feet. Just wants too much time on the ball. I give him a 5 out of 10, because he is there to score goals after all. But I did notice that Bruno singled him out for praise, even in the Chelsea game where the Chelsea goalkeeper gets sent off. Bruno mentioned Chesco winning the flick on and Mambumo running in behind and Robert Sanchez bringing him down. And Bruno did mention in an interview with Rio Ferdinand actually, and he said that that's what Chesco is there to do, to win flick-ons, and then Kuna and Mambumo will run in behind when he wins those flick-ons, and that's part of their strategy as well. And he was singling Chesco out for praise, for doing those things really well. So it's good to see the captain is certainly, you know, letting it be known to the player that I'm recognizing the things that you're doing well, even though you're not scoring goals. So that's really good. But as I've said already on a number of occasions this evening, that this evening, it's only afternoon, that he has to score goals. That's what he's bought to do. And no matter how well he does, he has to bring goals to the table. I know Olivier Giroud was loved by Didier Deschamps in the French team that won the World Cup. He didn't score. I don't think he even scored in that tournament, but he just loved his hold-up play and everything else that he brought to the team. But in a 38-game season for United, you need your number 9 to be scoring goals. So hopefully
Yeah.
that will happen sooner rather than later.
I think you just I think that's a kind, and I think it is. Players on the pitch will obviously see different things than what fans will, and sometimes fans are looking for bigger moments and things, whereas players on the pitch will almost they'll kind of know from. They'll pick up on the small things, I guess, because they're right there in the thick of the action, and they'll notice those wee flick-ons that we might have, as fans on TV, may not have even known about or even cared about. You're just interested in, did the man afterwards finish it or not, and you're disappointed if he didn't. Whereas, the players in the pitch will say, yeah, but that flick-on was great. So, they'll see the positive for the player who did the good play beforehand. So I can see why, Bruno's going to going to give him praise. But I agree. I feel like he's there to be a goal scorer, and we pursued him for years. You know, he's a player that it sounds like United have been scouting and heavy interest in for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. So they
Mm-hmm.
clearly see a big future in him. You know, that you wouldn't give somebody that much attention if you didn't think they were going to be a bit of a worldly for you. So I imagine there's a lot more to come, and I hope there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, he's the most most scouted United player of recent years. United were watching him when he was still playing in Slovenian football before he
Yeah,
even signed for Red Bull Salzburg. United were watching him, so
yeah.
they've
Clearly rate him
certainly
very highly.
they've certainly done their homework on him. This is not a knee jerk signing or a panic buy. They've been watching this guy for a long time.
Absolutely, yeah. They clearly think that he is a player that has to play at Man United. Like you said, Kyle, they've given a lot of time and effort into getting them to United. So somebody, and sounds like more than just one person, successive people over a long period of time have felt that way. So I'm sure they're not all wrong. So hopefully he's just bedding in, and eventually will fulfill the potential that clearly plenty of people at the club think he has.
Yeah, I just hope he can hit double figures this season. That's all I ask for at this stage, and then obviously improve on that year on year, and
Yeah,
obviously hopefully be more of a success than Hoyland. And
absolutely.
not asking him to do Van Nistelrooy numbers or anything like that. That's always a big ask of anyone. But if he can, you know, um, get to double figures every season, then that's pretty good going.
Absolutely.
Um, so plenty of substitutes last night. I won't give Fredrickson or Malassi a rating because they come on very late in the day. But Jack Fletcher played the whole of the second half, played his role in helping us keep a clean sheet. I give him a 6 out of 10. Um, Lenny Yarrow, yeah, played his role, looked more assured last night that he has done in recent weeks, and I give him a 6 out of 10 as well. And Joshua Xerxes was probably the most disappointing player on the night, I would say. As you say, he probably was asked to hold the ball up more and not, you know, you know, play teammates in, get turned and look for the runner. I think he was maybe was instructed to hold the ball up,
Mm-hmm.
just to alleviate the pressure off us a bit, but he didn't do that very well. He kept losing it every time he tried to hold it up, and surprisingly, he didn't seem strong enough for a man of his frame. And then wasn't on occasion he wasn't busting a gut to win the ball back either, which was frustrating the crowd and the manager. So I'll give him a 5 out of 10. But as I say, he's probably a player that has one foot out the door. And
Yeah.
Amorim, yeah, first time he decided to adapt and go to a back four, and the first half performance was really impressive, and we want to see more of that. And we probably will see more of that, especially when we get players back from AFCON. Uh, and I questioned his substitutions in the second half because I felt every substitution was making us worse and more defensive. But we got the result, and that's the main thing. We got our second clean sheet of the season. So it's been a long time coming. So I give him a 7 out of 10. But had we conceded a late equaliser, it would have been a 4 out of 10. It was one of them ones.
Game of fine margins, eh, Cal? Game of fine margins, always, yeah. No, hard to argue with any of those. I have to say, hard to argue with any of those at all. Yeah, like you said at the end there, Kyle. I think that when if we had it conceded at the end, it's a different game, it's a different scenario, it's a different feeling. That's just how tight football is. But sometimes managers have to gamble, and I guess he gambled a wee bit, as I said earlier, and it did pay off on this occasion. And it could work out well. You got the rest mount, which hopefully will have turned out to have been the right decision. And we still got the points. So yeah, all in all, given the depleted team we have, even during the game and certainly before the game, and we still got 3 points against a very good Newcastle team who were absolutely all over us in that second half. And albeit their finishing wasn't great, but still they were absolutely all over us. They should have won that. They would have been very disappointed they didn't go on and at least equalise. But yeah, it paid off for us. It worked out.
And it sets us up nicely for our next game, which is at home to Wolves, which I'm going to actually. So very much looking forward to that. I deliberately
Nice.
picked that game because it's the worst team in the league. I'm thinking, you know, United aren't reliable at the moment. So I don't want to spend hundreds of pounds making my way to Manchester and hotels and flights and all the rest. And then for us then they get beat. Playing against Wolves, we beat them 4-1 away from home. So I'm hoping this is going to be a banker. Although less confident because Arsenal needed 2 own goals to beat them. They got a draw at Spurs. You know, most games they've lost, they've only lost by the odd goal. Wolves. So even though they're bottom of the league and they haven't had any wins, they're not getting thumped in many games. And we're obviously a bit depleted at the moment, so I'm less confident about it. But I still think we'll get the job done. So that'll help us get
Good.
back-to-back wins, and then it'll hopefully give us confidence going into that tricky away fixture against Leeds, who obviously absolutely detest us, and they've been playing well at home lately, scoring goals. They got a draw at home to Liverpool. They beat Chelsea at home comfortably, so that's not going to be an easy game. So hopefully we're going into that fixture with back-to-back wins, and yeah, you think United will beat Wolves at home regardless of who's available. Hopefully Mount
You'd like,
is available in that game. But
you'd like to,
yeah.
yeah, you like to believe so. Yeah, yeah. Fingers crossed, and hope you enjoy the game, Kyle. Hopefully, it's a good result. Yeah,
Yep. So clean sheet, 3 points. Can't ask for more than that. But we don't want to see second half performances like that in too
no,
many games.
no.
I think we were satisfied with it because it was against a good opponent. If we were doing that against Wolves, there'd be a lot of angry fans.
Yeah,
That's for sure. It all depends on the
100%.
it all depends on the opposition, I suppose. But yeah, Amarim hasn't got a lot to work with at the moment because of injuries and international duty. So we have to factor that in.
Absolutely.
So we shall leave it there. Please, everybody, smash a like on the video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast if you're watching on YouTube. You're listening on Spotify or Apple. Get more of your comments in, and we will reply to as many of those as possible. And hope you enjoyed the podcast, and hope you enjoyed the win and the clean sheet last night. And Chris, I shall see you again next time.
Yep, sounds good, Kyle. Yep, good to see you again, mate. Take care, and I'll see you again. Thanks.
All right.